personal identity as a neurodivergent person in our world. Hi friends, it's Dianne here, and today we are talking about our identity. Whether you consider yourself a multipotentialite or a neurodivergent or twice exceptional, gifted, visionary, all those things, we have an identity that's personal to us, that includes our nuances, our sensitivities, our autobiography, how our own cells and being in our body works. See, we live in a culture that wants us to believe that everybody is the same and then we're divergent somehow. Well, really, we're divergent from that idea, but all people are different. There's no two of us that have the same autobiography or the same sensitivity of our nervous system or the same way of processing things. And so when I look at personal identity in our world, we can get pigeonholed and siloed fairly quickly, especially in a work situation, right? Where people think that this one thing that you're good at or this one thing that you do is all there is, but that's not it. There's so much more. We're always expanding. And so I'd like to assert something that I've been saying for decades and decades, is that our identity is not fixed. It is fluid, it's pliable, it's moving around, and it's always adjusting, it's always growing, it's always being flexible. So you're not this rigid, fixed pylon, if you will. You're not that at all. You're nuanced. You have many layers to you, and they're all always changing. And the ways they interact with each other changes over your lifetime. From wisdom, from experience, from chemistry, from autobiography, from all of these things. It's always different. So what happens often in the work setting, people think you're this or that. Like I've had people say, well, you Dianne, you're really good at solving problems. And then that's all I think I can do. And so then all the problems come my way, but none of the other opportunities because I'm only a good problem solver. Or you might be somebody who's really good at one technical skill and somebody in your work environment thinks that's all you're good at, but there's so much more to you. Because see, neurodivergent and exceptional people, we have lots of things that we're excited about. We may not show them all at work, but there's lots of things. A lot of the clients that I work with now and over the last several years have multiple things that they're interested in and that they engage in, not just one thing. In fact, when people think that I only do one thing, I'm like, well, what thing do you think that is? And I could ask 5 people who know me from work and they're all going to say something different, because the truth is it's all of those things. It's not choice A, B, C, D, it's choice E, all the above. And so that makes it easy for us to be misunderstood or feel not heard or to feel pigeonholed or micromanaged so that we don't want to do whatever it is we're supposed to be doing because it's not resonating with us. So I want to suggest that we learn how to live in a more fluid way, that we learn how to say, okay, I'm always changing, I'm always evolving, things are always in a movement kind of thing and never really static. And so if you appreciate that about yourself, that you're not static and that you're always moving and there's cool creation things always happening through you into the world, how would that change how you interact? How would that change how you choose what you do? How would that change your relationships, your friendships, your coworkers, your family? If we realize that all of us, we're always changing. Like I'm recording the show on a weekend and so I've had a couple days to myself to kind of be with my dog and play around and have not had any work, so to speak, that I've had to engage with other people in, right? Well, when I see clients tomorrow and I start working again, no, I don't see it that way, but in that role, right? What will happen? Those people aren't going to realize that from Friday to Monday, that there have been changes and evolution. And because my identity is fluid and I don't ascribe any one thing, that they might miss it. A neurotypical person might miss it. Now, I have a lot of neurodivergent friends and I have a lot of gifted twice exceptional friends, and all of my clients are. So all of us are different all the time. really. Now, there's core in us, of course. The core of us is beautiful and lovable and capable. The core of all of us is light and beauty and goodness and joy and love. And anything that kind of gets in the way of that, that's the altered state. Our natural state is joy. So we get to spend time in our world uncovering and kind of peeling away the layers. I kind of like to look at them as really light fabric, like a scarf or something that's easy to kind of brush away. I don't like to look at it as peeling a layer of an onion, because we cry when that happens and it's not always easy. But I can take and whisk a scarf off of myself. So I can change and allow myself to release the things that are restricting the fluidity of my identity. Because the truth is, it is fluid. I could be somebody's counselor in the morning. That's my identity then. And then later on, I could be somebody's really good friend. And then later on, I could be mentor. And then after that, I could be somebody who's interested in a certain book and we're having a scholarly conversation. All of those are parts of me and they're valid. And all of those creative parts of me exist. Then I could finish with all of that and go sailing. That's another part of me. And so all of you have the similar thing. You could look at the different aspects of your lives and see there's lots to you. So when we make the mistake in work or in our families or our social world where we think one person or maybe even two people will totally understand us and get it, we're going to miss out, because there's more to us than this, right? You're going to want to really spend time saying, okay, what's all the nuances? And how do I get my needs met? So I have a couple ideas, as I always do. One big idea is to become more and more and more in touch with yourself. So what I do every once in a while through the day is I put my hand right here. It's called on your high heart, right on your sternum. And I put my hand and I take a couple breaths and I say, okay, how is this, whatever's happening, landing on me? How is this interaction? How is this room temperature? How is whatever's going on? How's it landing on me? I was watching a movie the other night and I remember it was a little too dark for me. And so I put my hand on my heart and I said, how's this landing on me? And it didn't feel yummy. It didn't necessarily feel traumatic, but it didn't feel yummy. So I changed it and watched a different movie. That's called paying attention to ourselves. I'll probably watch the rest of that other movie at another time, but at that moment, it just didn't feel yummy. So I ask myself all the time, how is this landing on me? That's one thing you can do. You can slow down a little bit and pay attention. If it's not landing on you in a yummy, nice, kind of sweet way, then pay attention. And sometimes we have to do things that aren't yummy, right? And sometimes life isn't all that, but it's paying attention. So if it was prickly, but I still needed to do whatever the thing is, then I would honor the prickly and I would still take care of myself within that scope. So that when the prickly was over, I would come out even more charged up, even more aligned, even more fluid, right? So it's the telling ourselves the inner truth. It's having that integrity and that self-honesty that makes it so we can continue to keep going forward in our work in the world, whatever that is, in an authentic way. It's very, very, very important, because you're not a fixed entity. I have a client I work with who spends a lot of time in different countries. And in each different role in these different countries, the Americans have one view of his work. But then when he's in other countries, they have a different view, but it's the same work. So to him, it's the same thing. But to all the people around him, it's something different, because of the culture and the understanding and the autobiographies and expectations. Now, everybody's right. It's not about right or wrong. It's about understanding that we see each other differently. People see me differently than I see me. And I might see you in one way and I might say, man, I see how really beautiful and talented you are. And you might look at me like, that's not talent. I have friends of mine that argue with me when I compliment them. So they still have work to do to be able to receive a compliment, right? We all are working on something. And so our personal identity is always fluid, and it is directly correlated with what it is we're focusing on or working on in our personal and business world. So one thing I know for sure is that your business, whatever that is, cannot exceed how you feel about yourself. So even people who look all successful money-wise, if they're not in alignment and they're not healthy, and you look at other parts of their life, like their physical well-being or their health or their emotion management, you will see it not look so great. So if you want to have alignment and inner integrity and authority, it takes paying attention. What personal health and related development things I need to do to grow personally? What do I need to do to grow emotionally, mentally, spiritually, professionally? What is it? How can I keep developing so that all the different parts of me come together to this beautiful mosaic identity that is still always fluid? So who you are today is not who you're going to be, and it's not who you were. And so that's the first lesson. That's the most important thing to realize. You are not this fixed item. You're not. You're different all the time. With every breath, we're different. Our cells are different. There's some cells dying and some ones being born. We feed ourselves differently. If your diet's really healthy or you have no inflammation, your body's going to have a different experience in the world than if you've got pain. And all of these things affect our identity. I had this client one time come in my office, and she was 20 years old, and her mother set up for her to meet with me. And so she comes and she walks in and says, hi, and then named, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different diagnoses before she said her name. And unfortunately, I knew her name from her mom because it took all these diagnoses before she got to her name. So you see, her identity at that time was totally wrapped up in all these diagnoses of the things that were wrong with her. So I worked with her over a period of time, helping her see that those diagnoses may be accurate, but that's not all of her identity. And so now the goals that this young lady had, she's successfully doing, and more. She's growing faster and faster and becoming more and more happy and successful and has fulfilling relationships. And part of it, as she says it to me, is because I taught her that she has value and that a diagnosis is not her identity. So when people say they want a diagnosis about something, I always say, how will that serve you? Because in a lot of cases it serves us, but sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it does. Depends on what we do. So it's important that we pay attention to these things. Because if you walk around with the badge of honor of being a survivor, you're giving whatever it was you survived all the power. So you continue to be controlled by that person, place, or event. Oh, I survived this hurricane or that hurricane, and I survived this kind of trauma. As long as I hold on to that, I am giving the power to the hurricane or the trauma or whatever the item is. And that's what we want to pay attention to. Your identity is free of all of that. You're the one who puts that covering on top of who you really are. Now, of course, part of our healing and part of our growing might include owning the fact that, yes, I lived through that, and celebrating I lived through it. But then there comes a time when we're ready to say, yes, it was an event. And I've grown to the point where that event no longer controls me, and it's no longer one of my personal identifiers. That's when we know we're free. Well, we've taken away the personal identifier of the thing. That takes some work. It takes some self-honesty and some work. And it's totally doable. Totally doable. So I ask you, what are you going to do with your personal identity? How are you going to get up in the morning and see all of your beauty and all of your magnificence? How are you going to do that? Yeah. How are you going to stand in your authority with who you are and realize that you're not fixed? You're always fluid. And so just like water can drill a cavern into rock, it's not the power of the water in any given moment. It's the collective persistence of growth. So every day, what are you doing to grow? What are you doing to evolve? Meditate, journal, talk to people every day. Just like people in their spiritual walk, they'll go to church or some kind of service once a week and go home. But our spiritual development is not just an hour a week. It's ongoing. Our personal development is not just an hour a week. I mean, I work with all my people on a retainer so that they have access to me pretty much all the time, through email or something. And I don't expect anybody I work with to only be paying attention to working on themselves in the 75 to 90 minutes we're together. So I don't even do hour-long sessions because we're trained into that fixed dynamic. Yeah. Excuse me, of a 50-minute hour. No, not even a 60-minute hour. We're done when we're done, right? So how are you allowing things to be fluid? How are you allowing to come out of the idea that you are a fixed in a box thing and there is no changing? That's the question. So as we go into this year, as you go into your life moving forward, I invite you to embrace the fluidity of who you are, to embrace all of your nuance, all of your change, all of your growth, all of your development, and give yourself permission to be that magnificent person that we know you are. So as always, friends, please email me or set up a 30-minute call if you want to talk about this or any other topic, because that's what I'm here for, to serve your highest good. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Dianne saying, keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you are a rock star. You're here on purpose with a purpose. Go out there and let your light shine. And until the next episode, be well.